Welcome everyone. Thank you very much for choosing to be here with me. My name's Claire Agutter. I'm going to be talking about SIAM and why it should be at the top of the CIO's agenda. Do we have any CIOs in the room? Excellent. I might be coming back to you with questions then. So, bit of a different format for this presentation. I want to hear from you quite a lot. So many of you might be thinking, oh, I'm in the wrong room. I am relying on you being aware of the concept of the Choose Your Own Adventure novel. Do people remember those? Yep. So this is a Choose Your Own Adventure presentation. I can't promise it's going to be as exciting as the novels we had when we were kids, but the choices we make today could lead to either success or disaster. For me or for you, we'll see. So, chapter 1 in our novel. What is SIAM? So, you're all in this room. Presumably you've got some interest, but put your hand up if you think you are an expert, you understand the definition of SIAM. Anyone? Does anybody know what SIAM stands for? 1, 2, 3. Well, I applaud your choice then to come and learn. The reason I'm asking this question is, if everybody in the room is already very familiar with SIAM, we could skip chapter 1 and move directly to chapter 2. But we'll do some basics, and that's going to help us introduce the rest of the session when we get a little bit more interactive. So, SIAM, Service Integration and Management. It's another long, complicated IT term, which is basically about how do we glue things together in the complicated supply network that we all have now. You may well, in your careers, have been in the situation where something's broken. We're all very familiar with incidents and problems in the IT world, but how dreadful is it when something's broken and you go to the help desk log it, we create a ticket, and the help desk say, we're going to send it to the application team because this looks like an application issue. So we send it away, and the application team maybe sit on it for a little while, and then they send it back and say, nah, it's not the application, try the database team. So off our ticket goes on the next stage of its journey to the database team. They sit on it for a little bit, send it back, definitely not the database. Have you talked to the network provider? So at this point, our ticket is going to an external organisation. Maybe we have to log it in a different system, maybe it's fully automated, but it goes off to the network provider. And then the network provider sends it back and goes, definitely not us. We'd be getting penalties if that was us, so it's definitely not us. And we go on. And this is becoming more and more common in our IT organisations because things have got quite complicated. In a single application that you provide, you might have 5 or 6 external suppliers and 3 or 4 internal teams who are all involved in making this thing work. And particularly if you live in a bit of a blamey organisation, not everybody wants to put their hand up when something goes wrong and say, yep, that's me. And this is what Service Integration and Management, SIAM, is there to do. It's there to help us understand how all of these things fit together and look at them and manage them as end-to-end services. So rather than having all of your suppliers focused on their little section, focused on their targets, focused on their contract and their penalties, we're incentivising them to be involved, to be part of the big picture. And in a way, it is something that you would think initially is quite reactive. That problem I've just given you, it's a reactive problem. We've got an incident that's flying around. But ultimately, this becomes something proactive. It becomes something innovative. You know, if we think about the keynotes that we've just seen, how fabulous if all of our suppliers were working together to look at how we decarbonise across the end-to-end service. Rather than just looking at my notifications, let's look at all of the notifications. And this is what SIAM allows us to do. It takes away a lot of the headaches of supplier management, and it shows us the big picture. So putting it very simply, in the world without SIAM, we spend an awful lot of time doing supplier management, vendor management, contracts management, looking at monthly reports, trying to work out what's happened where, and all of those things are happening in silos. You get a huge amount of duplication, you get wasted effort. What we're doing with SIAM is introducing this concept of a service integrator, and depending on the size of your organisation, your service integrator might be something that you outsource to companies like TCS or Wipro or HCL. It might be something you decide to use your own resources to staff. It might even just be a slight mindset change because you're a tiny organisation and it's just something that you're asking people to think about as part of their role. But this service integrator concept is about bringing everything together. And I just want to draw your attention here to the external and internal service providers, both being part of this end-to-end chain, because one of the things that I do see is there's a lot of organisations that are really, really good at supplier management. What they're terrible at is managing internal teams. So if it goes to a supplier, everything's done, we've got targets, we've got penalties, easy peasy. It goes to an internal team, got nothing. Got no OLAs, no SLAs, and it just sits there. And I see a few nods, so I'm not the only one who's experienced that. So briefly, just thinking about the global state of SIAM. So it's a fairly new concept to a lot of people in the room. Scopism, which is the organisation that I work for, we do a global survey. We've done it every year for the last 5 years, and we started to build up a real picture of some of the trends that are happening in the SIAM space. And what we want to do with the outputs from the survey is kind of move away from, well, that sounds nice. We want to actually think about some tangible benefits, because if you talk to different people about SIAM, you know, people say, oh, it's just supplier management, isn't it? Just another way of talking about supplier management. Or, you know, SIAM's dead, we tried that, it didn't work. You do get that from a few organisations. So we need to think about the facts. And really what the facts show us is, firstly, SIAM is happening in all sorts and sizes of organisations, but the vast majority of it is in the big organisations. And I think that's quite interesting because that's where we're going to see big benefits as well. You know, the bigger the organisation, the more services you've got, the more service providers. Doesn't mean we can't apply SIAM in these smaller organisations, but our most recent survey had 73% of the respondents were in the bigger organisations with more employees. A couple of other stats that we pulled out. SIAM came from the public sector. It's another innovation like ITIL that came from UK government. A lot of the pioneering work was done in the NHS. But if you look at the sectors that are adopting SIAM, it's mainly IT, to be honest. I'd like to see enterprise SIAM developing, but at the moment it's mainly in IT, but you can see government, managed services, manufacturing, lots of different organisations. Financial organisations tend to be a big adopter of SIAM as well. But looking at this survey, looking at 2021, looking at 2020, you can see that IT really dominates because we have so much complexity to manage and because what we do is so business critical. Another one that I pulled out and which I thought was interesting is the benefits. So the organisations that have adopted SIAM, we asked, how's it going? What are you seeing? And better reporting and management information, better collaboration between suppliers. You start to get a sense for how SIAM is reducing noise, is enabling innovation, is enabling things to happen within these organisations. And again, these tend to stay fairly steady year on year. The stats that we get tend to be fairly similar. Okay, so I'll tell you at the end where you can download that full SIAM survey as well and get all of that data. But to get to the meat of my session today, the CIO agenda and how does SIAM actually help? And this is where I want your input as much as, to hear from me. So, did some research, talked to some people that I know, had a little look online, and in terms of broad themes for what CIOs are interested in, these seem to be the top 8. So, my CIO in the room, does that look pretty decent? Yeah. So what I'd like to do is focus in on what's important to you here in the room. We're choosing the next step in our adventure. So what I'm going to ask you to do first of all is a quick show of hands. Tell me which one of these you think is most important to you. So who is interested in delivering more value from a decade plus of digital investment? 4 people. Interesting. Who is interested in accelerating digital initiatives like hyper-automation and AI? 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Almost 20 people. The cool stuff. Who's interested in privacy and security? 11. Attracting and keeping good staff? 11. Preparing for next-gen technology? 3 whole people. Okay. Managing costs and cloud costs quite specifically? 5. Turning data into products? These are very interesting, I have to say. Sustainability? Okay, so we will start then with number 2, which is accelerating digital initiatives, hyper-automation and AI. So this is where I want to hear from you. Stand by with the microphone. This session's being recorded, so we're not asking you to use the microphone so that people in the room can hear you. It's for the recording for the people who'll watch this afterwards. So first of all, I'd like somebody to tell me why this is important to them. So somebody talk to me about why these digital initiatives are so important. Pop your hand up and the microphone will come to you.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Mark Hilson from White and Mackay.
Hi.
Yeah, for me it's about really helping small teams produce more. Mm-hmm. So it's not so, the teams are looking at all sorts of different AI and automation processes in finance, HR, etc. And yeah, that's the key one. Not increasing headcount, but increasing output.
Yes. Yeah. So being able to do more with less, more automation, cleverer decisions. Fantastic. Thank you. So I'd like somebody to talk to me a little bit about the importance of suppliers in this process. Somebody tell me why the suppliers that we work with are so important as part of that. You can go again if you want.
Thank you. Again, it's we don't have the internal resource again to deliver that, so we need key partners with key skill sets to sit in and have valid conversations with, whether it be particular types of professionals within the organisations, and deliver a product.
Yeah.
End product.
Yeah. And I think this is kind of the key to it, is a lot of what we want to do in this space is not necessarily something that we have the capabilities to do internally. And also it's not something that we necessarily want to develop the capabilities to do internally, because there are, just wander around the expo, there are specialist organisations that have amazing capabilities in this space, that have experience across multiple other organisations, perhaps even in your industry, that can bring their experience and support you. But as with anything, when you're bringing in other organisations to help, we need to be managing that effectively, or we can spend a huge amount of money and not see much in terms of results. So from the perspective of the customer organisation, the one who's kind of commissioning this whole ecosystem, the critical thing is choosing the correct service providers and then being very clear about what we actually want them to do. And where SIAM can help here is this concept of the digital workforce. So we tend to think in terms of people when we're working with service providers. You know, we've got somebody who takes a phone call, enters a ticket into a system like ServiceNow, fires it across to one of our service providers. They've got somebody there who picks it up. But a lot of the advances in the SIAM space are now about automation and are about removing the human element from so much of this. You know, talking about this ticket that's bouncing around between teams. How wonderful if AI can do the matching and the sorting there and there isn't any human involvement. How wonderful if we can actually innovate across the entire system. So some of the things that SIAM does that really helps is bringing in some standardisation, because a lot of the problems that come when you've got multiple organisations working together are the things that fall between the cracks. So it's that piece of information that got passed on but not logged correctly. It's that task that somebody thought, well, that's not really my job to do, but then didn't tell anybody about that. It's the fact that what you call an incident, another supplier calls a problem and another one calls a ticket. And you're trying to then put a common set of reports across that, but the very terminology that we're using isn't helping. So SIAM will introduce things like a tooling strategy. It'll introduce a data dictionary that's going to help with all of this. And once we start to look at automation across the piece, we can use things like process mining to look at our end-to-end processes, see where there's waste. We can start to look at experience end-to-end. And we can start to add this digital workforce, these virtual people. And it links into this concept of attracting talent as well. You know, maybe we don't need as many people in order to do that. So I think that's kind of a real cutting edge space, you know, in technology in general, but in SIAM particularly, because when we're looking at applying these across multiple organisations, the advantages and the benefits that we can leverage are just, you know, massive. So let's go back to our pick list. Okay, so we were joint for number 2. Privacy and security resonated quite highly with a lot of people. Somebody talked to me a little bit about privacy and security challenges that you've got in your ecosystem. Or is it too secret to talk about? Please, at the front.
Hi, Dominic Colella from Metrics Group. So not specifically my challenges, but my customers' challenges. So we did our own. So just to give you a bit of background, that Metrics Group, we are a IT benchmarker. We've got the largest IT benchmarking data lake in Europe. We're, you know, breaking into the global market. We just did our own IT agenda for 2023. I posted it on LinkedIn last night if anybody's interested in having a look at it. Some of the things are similar.
Yeah.
Top of ours is cybersecurity.
Yep.
And that's feedback from our clients. So that's CIOs and senior technology leaders across Europe. Then I can also provide the report to anybody that's interested in it. You know, just speak to me if you're interested. So security breaches,
Yep.
security software, security suppliers. So I'm relating this to your first slide where you explain how SIAM sits in the middle of your suppliers. Are you not just another supplier?
That's
So
true.
the point of what we do in benchmarking is to streamline and help CIOs streamline the service provision to, you know, small, you know, and it's not just about service providers, it's about software assets also,
Yep.
software packages, software licensing, multiple, you know, and again, it boils down to, I don't know if anybody was in the keynote speech earlier about waste. You know, it's all relative. So I'm just trying to get my head around how, and I was interested in it when I looked at the stuff that Digit sent, how SIAM fits in. But I'm just trying to, if you can maybe explain to me, if we just took some of the service providers away and shortened the list, why would you need SIAM?
That's an interesting point, and in theory, you can apply SIAM in an organisation that has 0 external service providers, because you can use the same approach to manage the internal teams that are part of service provision. But one of the benefits of adopting SIAM is the ability to right-size your supply ecosystem more easily. Because where a lot of organisations get stuck is they've got these legacy contracts, you know, maybe a really big outsource with one organisation. When something changes for them strategically, it's very difficult to add a new service provider, or it's very difficult to amend the contract that they have with one of these larger organisations. The change is very complex. What SIAM should do in theory, when applied correctly, is pretty much allow you to plug and play service providers. So you might want to bring in somebody, a cybersecurity specialist. You know, it could be a tiny organisation, you know, somebody who specialises in that field that you wouldn't necessarily normally work with. But your SIAM model should allow you to onboard them effectively, clearly, and then drop them as well when you need to. I'm working at the moment with a client in America who are adopting SIAM because they've got a single monolithic outsource contract at the moment. Some of it's working really, really well. Some of it is suboptimal. And what they want to do is decompose those services and have the ability to work with multiple service providers. But you're right. I mean, we don't remove service providers for removing service providers' sake, but we want to right-size the organisations that we work with. Obviously, there's a financial benefit, but there are also the environmental sustainability benefits as well that come in. But I think looking specifically at privacy and security, the more organisations that are involved, potentially the higher the level of risk as well. You know, you're passing information between service providers. How do you make sure that you are getting enough information to them for them to be able to do what they need to do, but not information that you do not wish to share? And another challenge that you find quite often in these SIAM environments is the service providers that you are managing are competitive in the wider market. So within your SIAM model, you're saying to them, please, you know, Atos, Capgemini, Accenture, Wipro, TCS, please could you play nicely together and talk to each other and collaborate and share things. Whereas in the market, you know, they might be fighting each other for the same contract. So we need to build an environment that supports this collaboration, and we need to make sure that we protect, as the customer organisation, we protect our data, our privacy, our security. We can't outsource that risk. We are accountable for that. But we also need to make sure that we give our service providers a safe place to play so that they can be sure that they're passing the correct level of information between each other, that there's nothing being lost, shared, you know, maybe moved to a geography where they're not supposed to have it because of the legislation that applies. So privacy and security is definitely something where SIAM helps you to get that holistic picture, that end-to-end view. Anybody else want to add anything about security? I'll just let the mic guy run to you, but thank you.
It was just to say, we have always considered security quite important, but we took it more seriously when there was that SIPA attack recently, a couple of years ago. And I don't know if it's other organisations have also been impacted by that, but it's definitely made us ramp up our interest in cybersecurity and, you know, securing things down. So I just want to say that, but just that, I think that has pushed it up the agenda for us.
Yes.
And it's definitely always on the mind of our CIO in meetings all the time now.
Yeah.
So I don't know if the private sector have been impacted by that as much, but maybe they're, I don't know how the different approaches from the public sector to the private sector, but certainly I think the Scottish Government are also pushing towards it, and we've now gone, we got the Cyber Essentials, which is the sort of foundation one, and we're now trying to keep that going. We're up this year will be the second one. We're going to try and second year we'll try and get it again. But I certainly know that the Scottish Government are pushing for these sort of things. I don't know if it's as the private sector are the same, but if they've got their own sort of qualifications. But certainly we are looking at that just now.
Yeah.
That's just all
Thank you. Yeah, and it is absolutely flying up the agenda in the public and the private sector because the level of risk is increasing. Even looking at the sort of the geopolitical environment and the state actors that are involved in cyber threats, that there is, you know, is something that we all need to be thinking about. And there is that saying, isn't there, that if you think you've not had a security breach, you've just not found it yet. So that's something that we tend to bear in mind. So yes, I wasn't surprised to see this popping up in the discussions that I had with CIOs that I know, and when I was doing my online research as well. I think Gartner had this in there, and it comes back to the sort of the fundamental principle of SIAM, which is you may choose to have 50, 60, 200, 400 organisations in your supply ecosystem. Your customer cares about what you've done. So if you have a security breach that is linked to one of your suppliers, your customer is not going to care when you say, oh yeah, but that wasn't us, that was so-and-so. They're not interested in that. And we see that with technical failures as well. When we say, oh, you know, sorry, it wasn't us, somebody's put a JCB through the cable, that's why the network's down. They're not really interested because their relationship is with you. And this is something that we've got to be so cautious about. And then attracting and keeping good staff was something that came joint second as well. And I know, and I've spoken with people in this room who've had some challenges attracting and keeping good staff, but somebody tell me a little bit about why this was a priority for them. Thank you.
So I'm Vicky Glynn from Cloudsoft. We're a relatively small company. So a lot of our staff cover a lot of our customer-facing activities. So if people leave, it often leaves a gap in terms of a customer relationship or a set of knowledge. And also we're growing as an organisation, so being able to attract staff is difficult to get a range of the skill sets that you need.
Yes.
Because a lot of our people have to not only do one thing in the organisation, similar to other organisations. And I think that as well, we tend to attract people who want to be problem solvers and fix things themselves. So some processes and ways of working with supplier managers can be frustrating because they're like, I can just do that. Like in my home life, I can just do this. I can just log on and buy this software. I can do this. So they want that ability to self-serve and just be able to work quickly in their own domain. Yeah,
absolutely. Just show of hands, has anybody had struggles recruiting in the last sort of 12 months? Yeah, quite a lot of people. Certainly it's something that I've experienced and a lot of my clients are experiencing as well. There is a bit of a war for talent at the moment. ServiceNow developers particularly. If anybody finds any, let me know. They're incredibly difficult to keep. And I think from a smaller organisation perspective as well, this is where SIAM can be quite interesting because we can change how we think about the talent that we use and the talent that we need and the access to talent that we have. So I founded Scopism 6 years ago, but I also have an e-learning business that I founded 14 years ago. And one of the things that we did was quite early on, we said, you know, we're a small organisation, but we need things like 24/7 help desk. We need marketing capability, but, you know, do we really have a full-time job back then? And what we were able to do was build a network of suppliers. For the service desk, for example, we used shared resources. And, you know, from the small organisation perspective, it took away a lot of the headache for us in terms of recruitment, in terms of things like managing personnel, in terms of all the contract work that we didn't have to do. But we had that 24/7 support. And we built a little ecosystem of suppliers that were providing us service desk, we've got web development, we've got marketing, all these different things that we could knit together. So I think SIAM helps us think about talent in a different way, think about how we develop the network of people that we need and how we can add and remove capability. Thank you. She comes in 5 minutes with a big walking stick and drags me off the stage. We can scale. And for a lot of organisations now, scaling is really, really important. You know, we don't have these very set patterns of business activity. Either it's seasonal or it's linked to, you know, something geographical, but it changes all the time. And if we can flex our resource network at the same time, that makes things much easier for us. And you know, for larger organisations, yes, you can absolutely see the logic of doing this, you know, rather than having your help desk that you manage with 80 plus agents on it. But for smaller organisations as well, having the benefit of fractional resources can actually make life a lot simpler for you. And again, SIAM gives us the skills that we need to manage this environment. So we've picked off our top 3. I've got a few more things that I want to share, so I will leave the rest, but I'm around for the rest of the day. So if you want to come and talk to me about any of the rest of these, if you want to come and talk to me about SIAM, please do. We've got a couple of other people from the team here as well. We've got Dave at the back and Steph at the front here. Pop your hand up, Dave. And Steph as well. So all of us are here for the rest of the day and we'll be happy to talk to you. But you'll notice I did prep every single topic, just in case. Okay. So, just a few final thoughts. None of this is effective without some thought from the organisation that is building this network. The old garbage in, garbage out saying that we used to have for technical systems applies just as much to how we source. If you've got just a pile of rubbish in your organisation and you start trying to outsource that, you've got a big pile of outsourced rubbish. So from the organisational perspective, you need to think about what is your vision for this? That needs to inform every single decision that you make. You need to have a sourcing strategy. You know, your organisational sourcing strategy might be, we want to do everything internally. We don't want to outsource anything. And that's absolutely fine, but make it a conscious decision. Do not let events drive you in a direction that you didn't necessarily want to go. Understand your value streams. Again, you can't manage end to end if you don't understand what it is that's being delivered to your customers. And a key one here, you know, we talked about availability of talent, but availability of service providers as well. Are the organisations out there that can help you do what you want to do? And a lot of my experience of outsourcing is how much work you need to be doing up front to find the right organisation. If you can find the right organisation, you can build that relationship and you can get that value and they will work with you. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done up front. And have that focus on improvement, have that focus on experience. Don't just shove things off to your service providers. That's not my problem anymore. We've paid somebody else to do that. Always, always have this focus on improving things. So there you go. The final chapter. All of this is a conversation. So if anybody wants to keep in touch, you will see me there. I have a very SEO-friendly name. I'm the only Claire Agutter in the world. So if you Google me, you will find me. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn or email me. And there is a ton of stuff about SIAM available for free on the Scopism website, the body of knowledge, process guides, and you'll find those white papers that are referenced as well, going back 5 years as well. And the very final thing that I will say is in 2023, we are launching a global SIAM community that's going to be free to join. And Steph, going to stand up, Steph? Steph is our community manager, so she's joined us to launch the community. So if you'd like to talk to Steph about that as well at any point today, please feel free to grab her. That's it from me. I make that 34 minutes and 40 seconds. So. Thank you.